All right. Hello, everyone. I'm really glad that you took time out of your busy day to join us here for our inaugural Pittcon coffee break, focusing on environmental topics. And as we get started here, I would ask that everybody here who is participating, if you could use the question panel and type in your first name and where you're from. That could be a city or a company or an organization that you're with. That would be really great. And while you're all doing that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself. So my name is Dr. Helen Boylan, and I'm a professor of chemistry and environmental science here at Westminster College, the Westminster College in Pennsylvania. And we are a small private liberal arts school, undergraduate population primarily, and we are known for very strong programs in the STEM, especially in chemistry. And that's my real job. My volunteer job is one with Pittcon. And for this year, I am the marketing chair. And I've had a variety of leadership positions, and I'm really passionate about being part of the Pittcon organization. So I'm happy to be here talking to you about it. So for those of you who are familiar with Pittcon, you're probably familiar with it because you've been to our annual conference before. And I had the opportunity to start attending Pittcon as a graduate student and was just amazed by the science and research that was going on there. And I'm very fortunate that now I get to encourage our undergraduates from Westminster to attend. And the picture that you're seeing here today is a picture of me and my colleague, Dr. Jessica Sarver, with 5 of our students who had presented posters as part of the undergraduate poster session. So it's really fun to see Pittcon through the eyes of our students every year. The Pittcon mission you can see here is really tied into what we do at our annual conference about facilitating the exchange of ideas and showcasing the latest in laboratory innovation. But one thing you may not be familiar with is the idea that we help fund science education and outreach. And this is the reason that I'm so passionate about Pittcon and why I'm involved. What you may not know is that over 90 cents of every dollar that is raised is goes to support science education and outreach. And that equates to about $1 million annually. So your attendance at the conference helps to promote and further science education and outreach, which is really, just an amazing thing to be part of. So with that brief overview, we're going to go ahead and jump into our focus for today. And so we have launched 10 program tracks. So the Pittcon conference encompasses a really wide, broad, diverse technical program of more than 2,000 sessions, including symposia and oral sessions and poster sessions, workshops. And in order to sort of categorize these things, we've come up with 10 basic application tracks to hopefully make it a little bit easier for you to navigate Pittcon. Our focus for today's coffee break is the environmental program track. And we're going to hit sort of 3 things today as part of this short session. One, we're going to quiz your knowledge of environmental issues. I'm going to talk a little bit and showcase some of the latest research in the environmental field. And finally, we'll wrap up talking about some of the things that goes on at Pittcon that relate to environmental science and related topics. So with that, we're going to jump over into our quiz question. So we'll do a little swap where the office people are going to take charge and pull up the poll. You all be able to participate in a moment. So you should be able to go ahead and vote. All right, so a little bit hard for me to see on my end here, but it looks like most people had voted 1 millimeter or less. The correct answer is actually 5 millimeters in length or less in terms of the technical definition of microplastics. So with that, we're going to continue with our discussion of environmental topics. So microplastics, as you saw from the quiz, are plastics that are 5 millimeters in length or less. And microplastics can be formed that small, or they can be what are called secondary microplastics, which are plastics that basically break down in the environment into smaller and smaller pieces. And that is really the majority of the microplastics out in the environment. And it turns out that microplastics are ubiquitous. You can find them everywhere. They're in bottled water. They're in the air we breathe. They're in ice cores. They're in human tissues, and they're in our food chain. And so I selected an article here to showcase based on some Italian or Australian researchers who looked at the presence of microplastics in some commercially available seafood products. And it turned out that the sardines actually had the highest level of microplastics. Squid had the lowest. So if you're worried about your microplastic consumption, you might want to avoid the sardines. Another issue that is of importance in the environmental field are the per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS. And basically, these are chemical substances that have fluorines attached to alkyl chains in a variety of configurations. More than 4,000 different individual chemical compounds make up this class of compounds. And they have some really unique chemical properties, right? They're flame resistant, they are waterproof, non-stick. So for all those reasons, they have beneficial properties. And the issue is when they get out into the environment. So they are a class of persistent organic pollutants, or POPs, out in the environment. And some people even consider them forever chemicals because they have such long life in the environment. And this article by Guardian et al. Took a look at the presence of PFAS in drinking water, which included bottled water as well as groundwater sources in 2 different Asian countries. And they found PFAS in the range of 15 to 65 nanograms per liter, which fortunately all of their test samples were below the EPA threshold for health advisory of 70 nanograms per liter, but still present there. And the issue with PFAS is that there are linkages to human health effects, including things like thyroid disease and some cancers. Now, PFAS and microplastics can make their way into water, so they can be water pollution itself. There's a variety of water pollution sources. And 2 articles that I found for this presentation related to the ability of using some sophisticated chemistry to try to clean up water pollution. And the 2 research articles really look at the interface of water pollution and material science, or nanoscience. The first article used 3-dimensional imaging over time to look at the dynamics of groundwater treatment using nanoparticle zero-valent iron. And the second one looked at the ability to clean up water using this silica nanofibrous aerogel that had been chlorinated, so basically disinfecting the water, and they were able to actually recharge those aerogels so that it could be reused again and again. Now, both of these things are really considered laboratory scale. They're not out in practice yet, but certainly some encouraging progress there in terms of water cleanup. And with that, we're going to transition over to poll question number 2. So you should go ahead and vote on this question. All right, so we are showing the poll results at this point. The correct answer was neonicotinoids. So we saw diversity there. That was certainly a tricky question. So honeybees are certainly at risk for a variety of environmental issues, including air pollution. And air pollution is one of those topics that's certainly trending in the environment. And the coronavirus pandemic has certainly been tragic, continues to be a tragic issue. But if there is one silver lining that we can sort of take away from the tragedy of the pandemic, is that environmental issues have improved over this time. So during the lockdown, people weren't driving to work, industries and manufacturing slowed down there, so there definitely was not the air pollution emissions that we had seen. So Zander et al. Or Venter et al. Published this. You may have seen some satellite imagery. There's a graph here, a courtesy of Statista, that basically looks at the numerical changes of nitrogen dioxide over the 3 months from February to April. We saw drastic declines in nitrogen dioxide on the order of 50 to 80% declines over those 3 months during the major lockdowns. So certainly some silver lining with respect to the lockdown. Another interesting research project was related to air quality in the Houston area. And this particular piece of research ties really nicely into sort of the social justice and racial justice issues that we see prevalent in the United States right now. So this looked at high resolution remote sensing of air pollution in the Houston area. And what they were able to determine from this study was that the non-white and Hispanic low-income areas had lower air quality than the white high-income areas. And so they were able to show this disparity in air quality, and they were able to link the disparity in air quality to the presence of industrial sources as well as heavy-duty trucking. So we see inequality playing out also in air pollution. Now, climate change is certainly a topic of interest, and you may be wondering, well, how does chemistry play a role in that? And a group of scientists out of China have done an interesting study looking at oxygen isotopes as a means to assess some climate variability. So by measuring the isotopic patterns of oxygen, they could really get a sense of what was controlling their regional climate. And it turned out that westerlies, or prevailing winds from the west, were really in control of sort of the reduced summer season in East Asia. China in particular is suffering from the impacts of poor air quality. It's estimated that 1 million people in China die every year from air pollution related deaths. And a group of scientists have looked at how climate change might impact that moving forward. So they did some studies that modeled different air quality parameters up to 2050. And it turned out that particulate matter as a specific pollutant saw drastic increases on the order of 68% increase by the date 2050 based on their modeling. And based on that model, they predicted up to a 39% increase in mortality related to air pollution related deaths and an aging population. So climate change tied to air quality, also an issue. And if we think about what's happening right now in the western part of the United States, where we're seeing these forest fires in California and Oregon, we're definitely seeing that connection also between climate change and air pollution, with those regions seeing some of the worst air quality that they've seen in decades. So with that very, very quick look at some of the research that's going on, current research in the environmental field, what I'd like to wrap up with is kind of looking at the environmental programming happening at the variety of facets at the Pittsburgh conference in all these different areas. So we're going to go ahead and start with the technical program. So the technical program includes the the symposia, contributed oral sessions, poster sessions, workshops, that sort of thing. And at this stage, we're still in the reviewing abstracts of the contributed sessions, but we have set some of the symposia sessions. And I've just selected 3 out of the symposia that have already been established for Pittcon 2021 that tie directly to environmental issues. So we see one, detecting and quantifying and evaluating PFAS exposures in the environment as one. Thinking outside the box, what is the role of analytical chemists in combating climate change as another. And a third one is emerging chemical contaminants in foods, analytical challenges in a current study. So certainly some relevant symposia happening in the technical program, and we'll see a lot more environmental topics come through with the contributed sessions as well. Now, Pittcon's Expo is considered one of the largest in the world in terms of laboratory scientific equipment. And if you're in the environmental field, what you need, you can find at the Pittcon Expo. So anything from field test kits to environmental standard reference materials to particular instrumentations, maybe a BOD analyzer, maybe you need an LCMS, whatever you might need, you can find at the Expo with more than 600 to 700 exhibitors presenting or exhibiting at Pittcon. Many of our attendees come to Pittcon to get specialized training. 2 that are related directly to environmental issues, including the evaluation of quantitative PCR for detection of pathogens in wastewater and biosolids, and one that ties directly to one of the topics we talked about today, analysis of microplastics in water, and having overseen an undergraduate research project where they were trying to detect microplastics. I can tell you that that is a challenging undertaking. Networking sessions are really one of my favorite aspects of Pittcon. So the networking sessions are basically roundtable discussions moderated by an expert in the field. And it's really a great opportunity to meet people who are in your field or have the same questions that you have, and to share ideas and to share questions. And so 2 networking sessions, our networking sessions for 2021 have not been established yet, but historically we've seen networking sessions on PFAS and also networking sessions on cannabis and hemp, where there's a lot of ties to environmental issues as well. And finally, I think a lot of people are not aware of the Employment Bureau at Pittcon, but if you are looking for an employee or an intern, or if you're looking for a new job, or maybe just want to see what's out there, you can certainly participate in the Employment Bureau. And there are environmental related organizations that are looking for people. So again, we don't have the list of employees for this year, but last year's employee list included Corteva Agriscience and Environmental Standards, Inc. So hopefully you're convinced that we have lots of programming related to environmental topics at Pittcon. And with that, we're going to have our final quiz question. All right, and the correct answer was lead. I saw there are lots of votes for all of the above, but the correct answer was lead. So thank you all for contributing to the questions. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to questions. So feel free to use the question panel to chat something in. I will say, you know, I'm a professor at an undergraduate institution. I'm not an expert in many of these research areas that I talked about. But if you have specific questions about Pittcon, I'm certainly happy to answer those if I know them. If not, we'll find them out for you. But please, we'd love to have your questions or comments. So I'm not seeing any questions. The office might see some questions, and they can certainly let me know if they do. I do really want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day to participate in this session. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you learned something about Pittcon, and you can see why I'm so passionate about being involved with the support of science education and outreach. And a final thought, hopefully we will see you at Pittcon, scheduled for March 6th through the 10th in New Orleans. We are also planning a hybrid version. So if you are not able to travel, there would be an opportunity to participate in some of the sessions online. So think about, you may want to consider that as well. We'll keep this open for a while in terms of any questions that you might have. But if you don't have questions, you can feel free to log off. We will be hosting some more of these Pittcon coffee breaks focusing on different topics. So we hope to see you back for one of those other ones. So thank you all and have a great day.
Hey, Helen,
Yes?
we did get questions. Can you see them?
I cannot see them.
Will Pittcon focus on process analytical technologies?
So it will certainly be a theme that's covered as part of the programming, and you'll see that in a variety of places, including the technical program, poster sessions, and that sort of thing. I don't have specifics about that, but that will certainly be an element that is covered as part of our conference programming.
Okay, and a follow-up to that was there are often gaps for practical application for analytics.
Well, I would say, you know, I think we see some gaps in all sessions. We try to recruit in a variety of topic areas, but at the end of the day, it comes into what people submit or contribute. And so we would just encourage you, if you have ideas for sessions, please submit those. If you can't think about a whole session, but you just have an idea, stop at the program office or submit them to program@pittcon.org and let us know what you'd like to see in the program, and we'll see what we can do about trying to recruit people to contribute to a session and to round out some of those gaps.
Okay, and now he had actually asked how does a user give a presentation at Pittcon, which you just kind of covered. But I do want to add that to go to the website. The call for papers is still open. If you'd like to expand on that, Helen.
Sure. So basically, you need to submit an abstract, and that abstract will be reviewed, and then you would be notified about whether or not your paper has been accepted, whether it's a contributed oral session or a contributed poster. Scott, do I need to add more to that?
That sounded pretty good to me. I did have one final question from one of our attendees. How did you get into the environmental science field?
That was my backyard was the Allegheny National Forest, which is a forested area in the state of Pennsylvania, and that was my playground. That was my science lab growing up, and that's how I became an environmental scientist.
Okay. We got a couple thank yous and very well done. I would like to add that as well, Helen, and I don't think we have any more questions.
All right. Well, thanks to everyone for participating and chiming in, and have a great rest of your day.